The Forgotten Empires, exploring the Aksumite Empire. Imagine standing in the middle of a field in northern Ethiopia, surrounded by towering stone pillars that pierce the sky like giant needles carved by gods. Some of them rise over 30 meters high, taller than a 10-story building, and they were shaped, transported, and erected over 1,500 years ago, without cranes, without computers, without any of the tools we take for granted today. Now imagine that the civilization that built them was, at its peak, considered one of the four greatest powers on Earth, alongside Rome, Persia, and China. And yet, most people have never heard its name. This is the story of the Aksumite Empire, a story of trade and triumph, of faith and fire, of monuments that outlasted the very memory of those who built them. A story that the world, for far too long, has chosen to forget. The origins of Aksum are wrapped in the kind of mystery that makes historians both thrilled and frustrated. The civilization emerged in the rugged highlands of what is today northern Ethiopia and Eritrea, in a region where the land itself seems to demand greatness, dramatic plateaus, fertile valleys, and skies so blue and vast they feel like promises. By around the 1st century of the Common Era, Aksum had grown from a regional chieftaincy into a fully realized urban empire, complete with its own coinage, its own written language, and its own architecture, unlike anything else on the continent. But Aksum didn't rise in isolation. It was shaped by centuries of cultural exchange with ancient South Arabia, across the narrow strait of the Red Sea. Traders, settlers, and ideas moved freely across those waters, and the result was a hybrid civilization uniquely African in its roots, but cosmopolitan in its character. The people of Aksum spoke Ge'ez, a Semitic language that still survives today as the liturgical language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, a living echo of an ancient world. At its height, between roughly the 3rd and 7th centuries CE, the Aksumite Empire controlled a territory that stretched from the Nile Valley in the west all the way to the coast of Yemen in the east. Let that sink in for a moment. An African empire held dominion over territories on 2 continents, separated by one of the most strategically vital bodies of water in the ancient world, the Red Sea. Trade was the heartbeat of Aksum, and the Red Sea was its main artery. The port city of Adulis, located near modern-day Massawa in Eritrea, was one of the most bustling commercial hubs in the ancient world. Ships arrived laden with silk and spices from India, glassware and wine from Rome, cotton textiles from Egypt. And in return, Aksum exported what the world desperately wanted: ivory, gold, obsidian, live animals, and slaves. The trade routes that passed through Aksumite territory connected the Mediterranean world with the Indian Ocean economy in a single, unbroken chain of commerce. A Greek merchant guide from the 1st century CE, known as the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, describes Adulis in vivid detail, its warehouses stacked with elephant tusks, its harbor crowded with ships from a dozen different cultures. The author even describes meeting the Aksumite king, whom he refers to as the king of a place called Zoskalis, a ruler who was educated in Greek and governed with both authority and sophistication. This is remarkable. In an era when most of sub-Saharan Africa remained entirely unknown to Mediterranean writers, Aksum was already being written about, visited, and respected. The empire minted its own gold, silver, and bronze coins, one of only a handful of civilizations in the ancient world to do so. These coins bore the portraits of Aksumite kings, inscribed in both Ge'ez and Greek, and they circulated across a trading network that stretched from the Nile to the Persian Gulf. When you hold an Aksumite coin even today in a museum display case, you are touching a piece of a world that most history textbooks pretend didn't exist. And then there are the obelisks, the stelae of Aksum. These are perhaps the most spectacular physical legacy of the empire, and they demand a moment of awe. The ancient city of Aksum, which still exists as a modern town in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, is surrounded by fields of giant granite monoliths, the largest one ever erected, and it is believed to have fallen during or shortly after construction, would have stood over 33 meters tall and weighed an estimated 500 tons. It was a single piece of stone, quarried from a hillside miles away, and somehow transported to this field with ropes, rollers, determination, and an organizational genius that archaeologists are still trying to fully understand. These weren't just impressive monuments, they were funerary markers built